Alrighty. Okay. Ooh, can we turn it down just a little bit, if that's possible? Better. Okay, cool. Hi. I'll try not to go too fast for everybody, but we good? We all set? Just let me know when. We're good? Cool. My name is Zach Shallbetter. I am the CEO at Cursed Crypt. I have started a number of businesses in Spokane. I am the president of a nonprofit called the Inland Northwest Technologists, which focuses on technology, job placement, kind of growing that entire sector in Spokane. I've been a member of a number of different organizations that are associated with entrepreneurship here. I've coordinated startup weekends and things of that nature. I've had a lot of time to work on my business mindset and ideation and generating revenue and learning how to take something from a concept or a nugget and validate it and verify it and take it into a place where it can generate profit or at least get to a place where it runs in the black, right? And of course I have concepts and ideas that are often wrong and fail, but the point is that I have understood how to apply my own risk assessment against those ideas in order to determine whether or not they can live and win and do what I want them to do, whether it's to make money or to prove a point or to understand the concept. That's kind of what I typically will end up doing when it comes to trying to figure these out. So a couple caveats before I get into anything that I'm going to say here. Nobody's me, so my ideas and my approaches are very much mine. There are very few people that I've met that are following the same approaches that I do, so don't necessarily take them as law or the only way to do it. You always 100% should do everything your own way, right? Don't follow my example exactly. Second, my ideas change all the time. My principles, my thoughts, my morality, my approach to this stuff is never going to stay the same, and that's the reason we are who we are, and we get better at this is because we grow, and eventually it all becomes invalid or becomes the lore that once, that tells the story of our work that we do now. So that's an important thing to be aware of. And success is defined by you, really. If it's money that's success for you in terms of where you get to, or if it's prestige or what have you, that's entirely up to you and what you want. If you end up wanting to be a celebrity that owns millions of properties and so forth, that's your thing. So don't define your success based on anybody else except for your own requirements. So my first question here is, how many of you currently own a business? Great. How many of you are in the leadership position in that business? Okay. And does everybody here understand Kickstarter and what that is and how crowdfunding works? Yeah, everybody? Great. So awesome. So your goal is to learn about Kickstarter and how to apply it to something. Okay, great. Perfect. Okay, terrific. So I'm going to step back a couple paces. We'll let this gentleman come in real quick first. I'm going to step back a couple paces and kind of tell a little bit of a story to give you an idea of where I am and how I was able to approach this. And I'll try not to go too much into my own life. So back in 2014 with my cool. Just let everybody come in. Back in 2014, I started a creative development agency with two other partners. Both of them are of very different understandings of the market, how development worked, how to execute on projects, business development, connecting with agencies, yada, yada, yada. But the whole goal of this is effectively to develop projects. So we would build websites, we'd do graphic design things. I was just coming out of contracting and working for other firms, so my understanding of business principles didn't exist, effectively. I was a contractor, and when you're running on the fly, you're learning as you go. So, I knew nothing about how to model, a strategic plan at that point and how to execute on it. And of course, then I've taken part in startup weekends, which I highly recommend you do if you're looking to start your own business or get into a place where you can build business models and canvases and things of that nature. I attended the Emerging Leaders Program, which is put on by the SBA. The SBA has a ton of programs in every single state and city in the country, so definitely make sure you join that. And then, of course, I started doing little projects and businesses and trying to execute on my ideas. So, kind of step forward a little bit. About 2 years ago, I brought in the Dungeons & Dragons startup kit. And this is the starter kit. This is the kit that includes, a single set of dice, a book, a couple things. Nothing too extreme, but it's designed to allow you to play the first, your first D&D game. And as soon as we put it on the table, I had this crawling feeling up the back of my neck. And I know that when I get that crawling feeling, that's something special. It's an idea. There's something there that I'm not picking up on, but I need to look into it. And what the idea came to between myself and my partners and friends was that this tabletop D&D market was incredible and hadn't changed since the 70s, effectively. Certain things had changed. Books had kind of improved. They issued new versions. There had been a couple little innovations here and there, but nothing had really changed in it. And things like, the miniatures that go with it having something special about the way that they interact with the board. The maps looking a little bit different, feeling a little bit different. The board itself, which at the time when we were playing it, we just drew on graph paper. And most people that were running these games were using vinyl rolls or these cardboard tiles to draw and write on them. And so, I began doing research into how to create an electronic component that I won't share because it's coming up down the road with us in my product lineup. So I was trying to figure out how to build this piece of electronics, and it needed to be small, and it needed to be thin, and it needed to do a couple special things. And what I discovered in a couple days was that, one, I don't know crap about electronics, really, knew zero about it. I don't know anything about batteries. I don't know anything about LEDs. I don't know anything about anything when it comes to PCBs, the silicone. I know zero about any of it. But what I did realize is that I could find someone relatively inexpensive that could execute on it for me, and all I had to do was explain myself properly. I had to tell him how I wanted to do it, or what I was trying to do, and give an example of some kind to show that I wasn't just a crazy person, and put my money where my mouth is, of course. And so I reached into my time. I used my time to figure out how to explain what it was I wanted to make. And within essentially 2 weeks, in front of me, he had produced a prototype of the thing that I wanted to make. So I had a couple versions after that, improved upon them, and it felt like the ability to innovate within this market existed. I felt that there was something there, and I could apply my capability against that. So I went to Penny Arcade Expo, if anybody's familiar with it. It's a pretty incredible event. 200,000+ people show up in Seattle and on the East Coast and in the South, and essentially just hang out and play games and stuff like that. They have it's a huge event, massive, and it's put on by two very creative professionals. And I mean, we had been growing playing D&D and games and stuff like that quite a bit since then. But I'm standing in this convention hall, and I'm watching this one booth, and bear in mind, there's a lot of different booths here. There's, Nintendo is there, Xbox is there, like major game development companies. This is a huge event that takes up the entire downtown Seattle corridor, essentially. It's wild. And I'm watching this one booth, and as we're going throughout the day, it doesn't change much, but they're selling dice, and they're selling mats, and they're selling, just random stuff for tabletop role-playing games like D&D or Pathfinder or what have you. And it is crowded. It's not a line of people. It's not a couple people standing around constantly purchasing. It's always a wall surrounding this entire booth. And it was like that the entire time I was there, which was stunning to experience. And so what I realized is, oh, okay, there's a market for this idea, for this place, this tabletop, ecosystem. And so at night, I'm laying in bed. We go back to the hotel, and I'm laying in bed writing my business plan like this on my phone. And I have essentially just this feeling that there's something very special to be had there. I go back to the office, and I effectively define to my business partners, this is my strategy going forward. I want to build a platform that we can add stuff to and make really great. We want to improve the experience of this tabletop game. And so I define what my problem is first, which is important when you're trying to determine what you want to do in building out this, because you can't define what your risk is going to be unless you know what you've got at stake and what the real problem is and what the market looks like. I got an idea on the market. I've got an idea on the problem, kind of, but I don't really get it. And so the problem came down to this. There is a large pool of people playing tabletop games, and the equipment that they're purchasing is not very good. That's all there is to it. It could be better, and if they want to buy accessories for it, they're having to kind of go all over the place in order to find these things. If they want to buy a miniature goblin, right, they've got to go to a random place. If they want to get maps, they have to get them either through the official source or through. So it's a scattershot system for a pool of people that are, looking to spend their time and money on this particular thing. So that's my problem. The solution is obviously to produce something to solve that problem, right? My second question was, what's the market? What does that look like? And so this is where it gets really interesting, and it kind of helps define understanding your risk, right? The market is difficult to figure out. And most companies are not going to give you squat. You're going to say, hi, I would like to know what the market for this WYSIWYG is. And they're going to go, oh, we totally know. And you're going to say, great, what is it? And they're going to say, we didn't say we were going to give it to you, we just said we know. And so that's the approach that you're going to deal with. And the best thing you can do is to kind of be sneaky about how you're going to get your information. Go to your library. We have Mark Pont in Spokane, who is the data king of the Pacific Northwest. He will give you anything you look for. You just got to ask him you have to know how to ask the question, right? As all things, you have to know how to ask the question. And so I went to Mark and I said, hey, Mark, what does the tabletop sector look like? And he said, I don't know. This is what toys looks like. This is how Mattel's doing and Hasbro's doing. This is kind of a general understanding of what we've got. And I said, okay, well, what is the age groups? What are the age groups that fit inside of that? Okay, well, those are, if you're buying toys, adult toys, it's going to range between 18 and 45, right? And now it's a little bit older, but 45 is essentially where it's at. And so I started diving and looking at competitors, looking at main publishing companies that are doing all of this, understanding what they do and how they generate revenue. What are they selling? How long do their products remain on the market? What's on sale on Amazon all the time? Or how long does a book how long is a book in pre-order before it sells? That'll define a lot. If a book goes up, like a D&D book goes up on pre-sale 2 months, 3 months before, well, they understand, they expect a huge volume and they've got to prepare themselves for it. If there's a lot there, how many other little tiny stores exist that are trying to sell exactly what you want, right? And are they selling what you sell? And if they don't, why? Are they doing it because your idea sucks and you're never going to get it off the ground? Or are you super duper innovative, like selling a Tesla, and eventually it'll be awesome, but you're going to need to figure out that, that struggle that's going to take to get there. And so now that you know your market, you've gathered some data on Kickstarter. Sorry, let me get a drink, my apologies. On Kickstarter, they provide you with information. So they're going to tell you what number of games or that sector that you're getting into. If you're selling, bath products, they're going to give you a general idea of what that surrounding sector looks like in terms of the number of Kickstarters that have been successful throughout time. I have all this data, and we were going to do a presentation, but honestly, it'd be me analyzing data with you for a while, so it's pointless. You're welcome to ask me if anybody wants to know this stuff down the road. But what I did is I used the Wayback Machine, and I went back in time to see what Kickstarter's growth across every one of those sectors look like. Where are they going to get to? How does that look in terms of Kickstarter as a full platform on video games, on tabletop games, on all sorts of stuff. I had to understand whether or not it even worked for the people that got into it, whether they even did well typically. How many Kickstarter campaigns that get put up fail, right? Is it 10%? Is it 5%? Is it 60%? Like what fails and what succeeds? What do the top 20 do? Is it they have a team behind them that's just wicked when it comes to graphic design and content creation, or are they just the best thing that's ever been made, right? Or have they been doing it for years? Exploding Kittens is a game that was created by an artist who is very, very popular. And so he already had his pool of people that knew what they were doing going into this. And they had a network and a list and could really knock it out. Plus, it was great, right? So it made it easy for people to purchase it. So my risk in this particular case is my idea, does it fit within that marketplace, and is it something that I can explain to consumers in order to sell it? And can I build a network that's big enough in order to lift it up out of the dregs of the people that are backing my project, or people that are seeking projects to back? Luckily, the tabletop market's explosive on Kickstarter. It's humongous, and most things that go up there, if well executed, can make it past their initial goal, okay? And you can kind of figure that out. So I know that Kickstarter works. I know that there's a marketplace for it. I understand my problem. My solution is kind of defined a little bit, and what comes kind of next from there. And really it comes down to building my prototype before I get into it. And this is where your real risk starts to kind of come in. And this is important because it's about your time and money, frankly. How much time and how much money are you going to be willing to put into this project? So when you get into something that's big, especially something that you have the intention of living off of and building your life around to one degree or another, you clearly have to define what your end goals are going to be and what you're willing to give up. Every business I've run, to one degree or another, I've had to give something up, always. With my first business, with Uxiliary, I had to, when I was contracting, let's go back further. When I was contracting, I had to give up my connection to the ecosystem, right? I wasn't working for a company. I had to give up health insurance, and I had to give up my network and things like that. I made a lot more money, but I had to give up a lot. When I started my business, I had to give up the contracting money that I was making and then deal with the risks that come with doing development on my own. And this is no different. If I was going to do this and it became either wildly successful or it failed, my risk was I was going to give up my time, my financials, or my cash flow to some degree or another, because I'm going to be putting it into this, and my family life, to be real, and potentially one of my other businesses, because they're not going to receive the attention that they need. They're just not. There's no way you can do two things at a high velocity like that unless you're some sort of subhuman, incredible race that it's just not possible. And so my wife and I made the decision that, hey, listen, if it's successful, awesome. If not, the risk to us is that we are going to have to start over. We're going to have to restart. We're going to have to turn the engine back over. We're going to have to stop, change the oil, figure everything out, turn it back on, and get back on the highway. And that's exactly what we chose. And so with that kind of validation from my spouse, it was, all right, what's next? How do I hit that first thing to move forward? Well, my next concept is, okay, I'm going to build a durable gaming board that allows people to connect magnetic pieces to it, and it's going to allow them to draw on it with dry erase. That's it. I want to make a device that can snap together, be drawn on, and is magnetic, and is better than a crappy roll-up mat or a cardboard piece. That's it. That's all I wanted. And so my team and I had some ideas, and we effectively developed our first prototype. Now, our first prototype, when it came through, this is not it. It was just a slab of metal. Effectively, it was a folded piece of aluminum. And right out of the gate, what we discovered was, oh, hey, metal is actually really hard to fold, especially if you're trying to do it thin, especially if you're trying to cut holes in it too, because there's all sorts of random conditions that occur wherein little pieces will flex and bumps will occur across it, and sometimes the mechanism or the tooling to fold it is not necessarily going to be quite wide enough, so you have to play the game a little bit in order to figure out. But what we had come in was a folded piece of metal. That was it. But what I had then was, okay, so we can do it. It just may require some figuring out of what that is. And that was my first prototype, and it was half the size of this. I took 2 of them, taped them together, and then I stuffed magnets in the side to make it do its thing, right? Then, from there, we went, all right, well, what happens when you go to steel? Steel's what we're looking for because it's magnetic. And so we did the exact same thing. And it took a month or so to figure out, and a little bit of cash in order to apply the concept to it. But really, we then learned, hey, this is actually really cool when it's magnetic. And there's a lot going on there. After that, we said, all right, we're going to paint it with a clear coat. We're going to put a screen print on top for a grid. And then we're going to be ready to go. That'll be it. We're done. Solid. And so we put a white paint coat on it. We screen printed it and put the and it was great. And then we discovered within about 2 weeks that if you draw on it with any marker at all, that's any color besides blue or red, that it stains. Like stains horribly, like where it's permanently in there. It's, you know how a dry erase board stains when you put stuff, like some certain colors on it? Brown is a good one, or green. It did that, and then it never came off. And so we essentially nuked right out of the gate 4 of our prototypes, but it gave us the ability to do some testing, experience the snapping that happens when you put them together because the magnets are in place. I'm just gonna keep spilling this coffee. And so we went through the process of ideation, iteration, testing, problem solving, back and forth one after another, trying to figure out how to accomplish this. And specifically trying to solve the condition of staining. And what I came to understand during that process was a very, very important lesson that I don't think we often experience until we're there. Your knowledge experts are better than you at most things. The company that works on these grids with us, they're more than partners. They're incredible. Their entire team is bonkers over at SciTech. They put the time in with us to understand how to make this work. They put in the time to figure out how to make it fold. They put in the time to apply all the different techniques that they knew. And even further, when we came to them, we said, we are SOL on this product unless we can solve that staining issue. Nobody's ever going to want it. We said, what happens if we put certain coatings on it? And we went back and forth, and ultimately what came out of it was a proprietary approach to putting a special coating, an industrial coating on top of it that can't be stained. I can draw on it with permanent markers, I can draw on it with dry erase markers, I can draw on it with a variety of different things, but it does not stain, and it sticks. And so the effect that you end up with ultimately is being able to draw on something with dry erase and leaving permanent marker on it, and then being able to clean off permanent marker. So if you felt so inclined, you could work through your plan, draw on it, and then it'll wipe off and the other stuff won't. And so that's the principle that we kind of were using to define what comes next. And so it's not really very useful if you're just building a board, right? I'm going to sell these things, and I gave you like essentially the perfect device, and you're never going to replace it. That's my goal. I want you to go, I'm never going to replace this, and it's perfect. Okay, well, how can we go the next step to make it even better for everybody? And given that it's magnetic, what does that mean exactly? And so I had this idea for maps and buildings and miniatures and all this stuff. And essentially, we figured out how to print on magnets so that you can use them as textures and grass and stack houses and do all sorts of stuff on top of it. And it stays. So if you have this and you throw it into your bag and you head out, it's already there. So if you show up at your game, you can just pull them out, and it's already written on with the permanent marker. It's already got the map on top of it. And then if you have houses, you can do multiple floors because you can stack them and remove them. So we built this entire plan behind how to do it, but in the process, what we did is ended up adding a lot of production structure on new stuff, which is way worse. Like if you're building a board game, like, it's got plastic pieces and it has a box and it has these particular things, that's been done. They can print on cards. They can print on board game, material. They can do all that stuff. That's doable. If you're making something that's common, you can get it done. You can always find a manufacturer who's going to do it. It's all down to the cheddar and how much you're going to spend on it, right? But in this, I now have a product that's never been made in a manufacturing process that's only been done once for us and have been effectively invented with our partners. And then I came up with a new solution that's, apparently no printers that we were able to connect with knew how to do, except for sign shops, right? And so what that left me with was the risk of failure through complexity. I engineered the hell out of this thing, and my risk now is it actually truly doable? And if not, how much time have I wasted on getting it done? And so my next task was to prove it. Prove that I can make 40 of those things. Prove that I can throw a design in Illustrator or Photoshop, send it to a print house and get them to make it. Prove that the cost is not going to be hundreds of dollars for something, and it's going to be reasonable, and it's going to play out over the long term. And I did that. So we were able to produce it. We even did some other stuff. We tested some new approaches to certain things. We built a notepad that has the AnyErase coding on it, which we then coined the term AnyErase because you can write on it and erase any of it. And we put it on notepads. And the capability of that is massive. I mean, the potential for that is huge. And so now a DM can write on this, and they can write on this, and they can throw this in their binder or their bag. Not only could we do it there, but we could do it fast and in smaller sizes and quantities. But there was still the problem of the magnets. They cost a lot, and we want people to buy a lot of them. A person that comes in is going to play that game a couple times, and they're going to be done. And effectively, we went through the iteration process of figuring out how to get someone else to do it, and then we figured out how to do it ourselves, and how to do it in-house, in bulk. So, kind of pausing for 2 seconds. What I'm trying to get at is that Kickstarter enables you to look towards unusual concepts, but the thing that you have to know and do in order to actually get what you need in order to produce this indefinitely is a very clear understanding of your market, your product, your manufacturing, your audience and market are two different things, your audience and your personal willingness to give up something. And once you have that, the rest is just execution. That's it. After we prototyped all of this, we figured out how to price it, figured out what the costs were, went through the process of doing that. And you don't know what you don't know. And that's a scary thing to know, that you don't know what you don't know, right? What do I not know? And I'm the only person right now who knows what I don't know and what needs to be known. So that's very difficult when you're starting a Kickstarter or starting a business, because your relationships with the people that are working on this stuff with you needs to be consistent, because what ends up ultimately happening with your partnerships and your friendships and your business partners is that they are going to live their lives and don't necessarily have the same amount of risk in place that you do. They are not putting they're very rarely going to put in the same amount of money, the same amount of time, the same amount of effort, specifically effort, into accomplishing the thing that you think that you have deemed is the most important thing in your life. They're not. And that's risky. Because once you start giving them knowledge to control, hey, I need you to figure out how to make boxes. I don't have the brain space for it. I'm writing a business plan right now. I need you to help me with that. Are they? How long is it going to take? What's it going to cost you? What's it going to cost them? Are they on your side? Are you actually going to get what you need? And when they drop the ball, can you pick it up? That's a risk. That's the risk you're taking in putting your trust in them. And so the lesson that I learned out of this is that you as the entrepreneur, as the inventor, as the product producer, as the campaign manager, have to be very clear in what your expectations are. If someone comes in and you're offering to them is, hey, you're going to be part of this business, it needs to be, okay, solid, this is what I'm going to work on, and I need you to be really good at this, and if you can't, you have to tell me right away. And if you feel like you're not going to be able to stay in this game with me, you've got to let me know before it gets too far down the road so I can pick up the concept.
How many prototypes did you build?
Yeah, 8, I think, in total. Yeah.
And how long?
It took about, we started really producing in earnest in January-ish. So we had our final prototype delivered in June.
Okay. So it took you 6 months from concept to something you could actually shoot a video of?
Well, we could shoot the video of the second prototype when it came out. It was filmable.
Could you put it on Kickstarter?
I wouldn't.
The second one?
I certainly could have. I wouldn't have, but I could have. Yeah.
Why not?
Because it would have been a lie. It's a lie. I didn't prove that it worked. And what I'd be using Kickstarter for is then development, not execution. You follow? So okay. What the risk ends up being is that they're paying to prove, they're paying me, they're funding my business to figure out how to do it as to. So there's concerns in there because a backer, frankly, if you pick up $100,000 on Kickstarter, they expect something, and it's not going to be T-shirts.
Well,
so
it's resell pretty much, isn't it? In that Kickstarter?
Effectively, yeah.
Okay.
And there is some like you can add a little coverage on certain things on how to handle certain principles of the project. For instance, these things, when we launched our Kickstarter, we didn't know whether we were going to do it in-house or if we were going to have someone else do it. We had no clue. And the reason is because, one, we didn't know if people were going to care enough to buy this as an accessory for the project, but two, we had a great fear that we would not be able to do it ourselves. And so we were making sure we left that option open and not promising anything in terms of us doing it in-house.
Did you source manufacturers before to see how much it was going to cost you in-house and how much it was going to cost to get somebody else to do it?
Yeah, to a degree, yeah. As much as I could.
And as far as your quantities go, what did you shoot to them? Just say, give me a price on 10,000?
Yeah.
1,000?
I'd start well, there's a couple of really interesting things you can do here in my experience. What I often do is I will shoot for my minimum quantity that I think would be like essentially bottom of the barrel. How much would 1,000 square feet of that cost to produce with 20 different design iterations? What would that take? And they'll give me the cost per square foot, and I can break down some math on that. And then I'll give them a really high number, like $1 million, right? And give me some breakdowns on that. And what I can typically do is use that calculation to figure out where it's at. When you're dealing with Chinese manufacturers, and I've learned a lot about China in terms of how all of this works. We originally went into this conversation with essentially through Alibaba, in effect. It kind of bled out of that a little bit afterwards, but we went into that conversation with, I need my magnets, I need my neoprene, I need the guts that go inside of this, our impact frame that goes in it, but all of this stuff, the outer housing was going to be done in town. That was my original goal. And then all of this was 50-50 on whether or not we were going to have a third party do it or we were going to do it ourselves, or we were going to do it in China, right? I'm sorry, a local third party or someone in China is what I meant to say. The interesting thing when it comes to China that everybody needs to know when they're trying to produce something, and this is also a risk, is that you have no real honest-to-God concept of what shipping is going to cost. Nobody does. Even they don't really know until it arrives at your doorstep. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. The actual putting it on the pallet, the size of the pallet. Are you going to share? Are you going to share a container with them? What does it take to get just from their facility to the dock?
Especially now.
With
tariffs and everything. Sort
of. There's some details on that I can explain in terms of that. You don't know, and so my strategy is if I go onto a service like Alibaba and I'm looking for rolled neoprene, what I'll do is I'll take their MOQ, which is their minimum order quantity, and I'm going to take the highest price on that. So I'll take the lowest MOQ, which is 500 or whatever, and I'm going to take the highest price that they list on that, and that's going to be my general baseline. This is what I think basically it's going to cost per item from them. And so I can get a pretty reasonable price out of just that concept, because you're giving yourself a wide berth in terms of, hey, I know I can get a 64, their maximum price on this is, 100 per square meter, and their price on it is 50 cents, right? And I can say, great, well then I know that I can effectively get X amount for the highest dollar if I needed to. And then you price locally and do some comparisons, and ultimately they'll come back with a price that's way beyond any of your expectations, but you have a lot to put on top of it. So as an example, we have these magnets coming in. So I ordered, in effect, I ordered 100 of a variety of magnets, and they include these. We got it in right before some things changed in China, but what they ended up telling us during the invoicing process and then a little bit afterwards is that to ship all of those was going to cost $700. Now, what they didn't talk about is what the duty fees were going to be and what the actual tariffs were going to be on top of that. Tariffs only apply to certain things, so you really are going to have to play some games and have some conversations with your manufacturers in order for them to either categorize it appropriately, which is important, or to understand what that tariff is going to look like, and it can be different for everybody and everything. You ordering a bag versus ordering magnets are very different experiences in terms of how that cost. A bag is bigger, but it's lighter, things like that as well.
Did you use a broker?
We started to, but we have not had a good experience with brokers.
How about the quality? Did the quality remain the same from the first time you ordered to the last time?
That's a very good point. So here's the way that story played out over time. We were initially essentially going to produce some of this stuff, but we wanted to make sure we made it in the US and in Spokane. And as time went on, we removed more and more and more and more and more from China and worked with our United States partners to figure out how to get the price into a ballpark that was reasonable. And so the only things that are being made in China for all of this stuff, and I mean, there's 57 total items that I'm producing, and then parts on every single one of them. Every one of them can have anywhere from 5 to 20 parts per item. So we are ordering a lot of stuff and making a lot of stuff. What we discovered is that the ratio to time to delivery, right? So the Chinese are going to do their best to get it out the door fast, but they're going to drop something in the process unintentionally, or they're going to try to determine efficiencies that may or may not be what your original item was, as you were asking, or it's going to take forever to ship and forever for them to start, and you're going to get a killer price on it. And so we couldn't make the numbers work. We couldn't make the numbers work. We couldn't guarantee that the quality was going to be really high. We couldn't justify it in its entirety. And we ultimately ended up going, all right, we know we got to get magnets in China because they control the rare earth market. I'm going to spend $1 for a couple of them where I spend cents over there. And we have to get our bags because, frankly, the samples we got were gorgeous and they were perfect. And they did the changes we needed and they were able to get them to us before our delivery date. Yeah.
Did you have any feet on the ground over there?
No.
Okay.
No. What we ended up doing, and this kind of happened accidentally, I was being annoying. I was reaching out a lot to different individuals over there, trying to understand how to ask the questions, what I didn't know. And early on it was, hey, how do I want to order dice, right? Trying to understand how to order dice. And because that was a pretty basic, everybody does it. And I slowly but surely kind of built a knowledge pool that allowed me to ask the right questions. And then I eventually I started figuring out which of the individuals I connected with were trustworthy and could explain and understand what I was telling them. And so I've effectively built 5 or 6 people over there that can source a variety of things from different suppliers in that region, as opposed to dealing with dealing with either a broker or trying to have a manager on that side. Down the road, oh yeah. I mean, I'd be stupid not to hire someone to go out there and figure out how to negotiate prices and verify my quality on bigger stuff. But right now with magnets and things like that, photos and samples do the job.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long did your Kickstarter campaign last? Because there's a time on it, you know, typically
right.
they say, what, 30 days to raise the funds?
Depends on who you are, yeah.
How do you feel about that?
So the data suggests this, and it's interesting. Years ago, the data suggested that 30 days was the right amount of time to do it, and if you were going to ask for a specific amount of money, it needed to be less than you really needed, unfortunately. And it was based on what people were referring to as kind of the interest algorithm, essentially. We can hold people's attention for 30 days, and if we hit, so let's say $10,000 on something that's really going to take about $50,000 to build, but if we can hit $10,000 in the first couple days, then Kickstarter is going to say, ooh, that's very valuable and important, and it's going to move it up in the ranks in terms of.
What's your goal? Isn't that something they consider?
That's it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why you place the amount that you're asking for lower out of the gate.
Okay. And then they said the psychology of people is that they see that, well, these guys met their goal, so they must have something going on. So that works a little bit of a mind game.
Yeah. Oh, without question. Without question. It's. I mean, I can show you. If I showed you the data from our Kickstarter, it proves that that's true. However, we also become more excited and active when we meet our goal too. The people that back these campaigns tend to get better at communicating to their customers after they've been funded, because that's when all the exciting stuff happens. That's when stretch goals occur. That's when people start asking a lot of questions about details on this, and you can answer them. That's when you begin to fill out your FAQ a little bit better. Campaigns, to be really honest, frank with you about this, the campaigns that do the best are the ones that clearly explain what it is they have, what the backer's getting, and if it's more than they would expect, and they're the ones that have a community article so that they can network with. If you can do those things, the rest is going to move pretty quick, because one, you can send out your email list, communicate to your network, and you're going to have a rush of people that are going to come in and save the page one fashion or another, or and quickly zero whatever your halfway mark or goal on that. Exciting and interesting. That's really it. I don't believe, now that I've gone through this, I don't really believe that there is an algorithm that changes the status based on how early, or not how early, but I don't believe that it's based on the reward level that you set, is kind of my belief on that. I think it really is just the amount of activity that's happening on that, and that's going to move you. That's kind of my opinion. I might have double spoke on that, so ask me if I did.
How many offerings do you have? Like,
Me?
Well, okay, you or what's your suggestion? Like for $50 you get this, for $100 you get that, for $200 you get this.
So the reward tiers are going to be, this is very complicated, and this honestly is one of the things that we drug until the very, very end, and even then we didn't do the best job that we could have. Your reward tiers need to be easily understood, and the pricing needs to make sense to people, and that's all there is to it. For me, we used BackerKit because our intent was to sell a ton of these art sets and all the accessories that go with it and the cut elements. There's no way on this earth we could have done 100 or more reward tiers. It would have just been out of the park ridiculous. And so what we did is we said, hey, we brought on some artists that we thought would be awesome, and we said they're going to produce their own art sets for this. And so we did 5 or 7 tiers that were pretty basic, right? $60 for the basic that doesn't include any of this stuff, $75 that has one of those. All of them come with magnets that that have 3M adhesive on it and stick to your miniatures. We made sure that the tiers made sense, and that as you got higher, benefits were way higher. And so most of our backers broke $100 in terms of how much they funded.
Did you make money on the different tiers, or did you kind of give them away to?
Oh, I follow it. Was
retail your end game?
Retail is not my end game. No, my end game, the business's end game, is to develop the infrastructure wherein we can create innovative products for the tabletop sector, and on top of that, consistently produce accessories like this, like miniatures, grow in the tabletop sector wherein we can produce the best possible products you can purchase. I'm not going to be selling in retail if I can help it. Unless we have a very specific ask that says, hey, this is the value behind it, my intention is not to sell in terrestrial retail. We're building a marketplace wherein artists can upload their artwork, and the artwork can get cut and dissected and then printed and shipped out the door. So the answer to, let me step back 2 steps. That kind of brings me back to where we went with the production of these things. In the end, after a bunch of testing and working on our pricing model, which you need to do early, we discovered that we could do it at a pretty good price in terms of manufacturing and a pretty good price for consumers. And we could do it in a way that meant we didn't have to keep any inventory at all. And so we effectively picked up a facility, and we can produce these in-house fully on our own machinery, which is big, which means that a customer can come in and say, I want that, hit submit, it goes into my jobs, and it gets run and cut and shipped. And so that's the infrastructure that I'm building. It's the same thing with stickers, it's the same thing with shirts, it's the same thing with posters, all that stuff I can do in-house now. Because I'm
What's your delivery time?
For our Kickstarter?
If somebody orders a shirt or a sticker, how long is it going to take them to get it?
We're not 100. We're still working on the equipment running that right now, but the turnover should be essentially the same day. That's same day to get it out the door. So someone will come in at 4 a.m., set up all the jobs from the work order, and then they'll ship out with USPS. That's my intent. My goal is to not carry inventory, and that's the thing that you should think about when you're running your Kickstarter. Is your intention to continue after? Because people are going to ask you, hey, I'm investing a ton of money in your business, because it is, whether we'd like to think so or not as Kickstarters, you are in fact funding their business. You're not funding the project. You may believe you are, that a super nice thing out of this, but really you're helping them to build the understanding, the tooling, and the negotiating power to be able to produce stuff. And so my job as the CEO was to figure out how to take that money and use it to build a permanent infrastructure that I can do this forever for them at a reasonable price. And that was the end goal, ultimately. And that was how I was getting away from certain risk, because risk, in this case, the big, bad monster risk that I was dealing with was, what happens when it's done? And my business partners really felt this one. What happens when you finish? When I produce, all 7,000, and I produce all 2 million square inches of this, what happens then? I didn't get enough money to cover 20,000 more for retail to stock my shelves. How the hell would I, pardon my French, how the hell would I order 1,000 of these at a time in different variations and cuts and guarantee that people even care about grass or castles or whatever? I had no concept of that. And so that infrastructure decision on terms of whether we were going to do it in-house or not didn't really get locked in until the day we finished our backer kit surveys, wherein backers went in and bought all the accessories on top of their original Kickstarter backings. So let me help people understand that just a little bit, because this can be confusing. When you run a Kickstarter, there's a couple different ways that you can understand where your backers live. Kickstarter does not maintain that information. They don't maintain addresses. They don't keep demographic data on their age or their sex or any of that stuff. It's a username. What they do allow you to do is send out a survey that asks some questions. Hi, backer, please give me your shipping address, and please give me some details on the thing that you're going to be, that I'm asking you regarding this project. Luckily, there have been some other tools that have come out of all of this called pledge managers. BackerKit is the one that we used in particular, and what it does is it takes, it gives you the ability to create a separate store or to build questions that have a little bit more of a dynamic nature to them and send that to those backers. The problem is you can't do that until the Kickstarter's over. And even then, you can't do that until Kickstarter pays you, which is not fast. And so it could take anywhere from 2 weeks. Sometimes it can take more. We were relatively lucky, but it took a little bit for us. And when it ultimately came through, we came to the realization that, oh, there were some other things that we didn't know because we just didn't know. And so it's not going to be end of the Kickstarter is when your money comes. It's not even going to be end of the Kickstarter or 2 weeks. It's going to be when your backers have answered the surveys and you understand really what that big picture looks like, which is difficult. It's difficult when you've spent months and months and months and you have this feeling it's like, we're going to get moving on this, and it just takes an excruciatingly long time. Yeah.
How important do you feel the video is?
I think your video is, I don't know, like 120%.
Okay. Did you do it in-house or did you have it professionally done?
That's an interesting question. We kind of did a hybrid of both, really. I had this concept for how I wanted the video to go, and we looked for a firm locally that could help us. The price was just kind of outside of our wheelhouse, our window on what we were willing to invest in this process, getting to that, because you have to pay for that before you do it, right? You have to pay for the prototypes before you do it. You have to pay for all the stuff before you get it, before you launch your Kickstarter. And so we found an organization locally called CMTV14, and they have a ton of equipment, and they are the nicest people in the world. And the price is relatively great for a subscription on this. They're generous in terms of how they assist you with it. Now, would the quality of the production have been substantially better had we gone with an agency like we had originally intended to? Yeah, without question. But sometimes the expenditure out of the gate is hard to justify versus an ethereal endpoint. Is it going to be 100 backers or 1,000 backers? And so instead of spending between $10,000 and $20,000 on the video that we really wanted, my prototypes arrived the day before. Like all this stuff that I had arrived the day before the film production. My boards arrived and were ready to go the day before film production. And that wasn't even my final prototype yet. And we had some people come up and we filmed it.
You called it, is it CMT14?
CMTV. Community Minded Television 14. Deshaun and Darian are the guys that you want to talk to over there. I definitely recommend them. At the very least, they can help you with editing and stuff like that. They're incredible across the board in regards to what they can bring to the table and help you with. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are they the ones? Do they have a TV station that they run in Spokane?
Yeah. So they're
12 or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the station is, but they have a partnership. Or they're through. I believe it's KSPS. They have a partnership with that organization, and they have their own channel that runs and things of that nature.
Their own video production company.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit that they operate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I could probably keep. What's our time look like? How are we doing, Kelly?
Well, 5 minutes until officially ends, but you can.
Okay. I'm happy we'll kind of skip forward a little bit. Nevertheless, we hit 330% of our goal, and then through Backer Kit, we hit half of that amount in terms of additional funding to allow us to continue forward. The response has been better than anything we ever could have expected across the board on this, and we've begun to really lock down the ability to continue doing this indefinitely with our partnerships and relationships and things of that nature. So there's a lot more there. Really, the end reward on all of this is that you have to, it's very personal. And this is risk-reward conversation, right? And I think I've covered risk quite a bit across the board on this. The reward is going to be, in your mindset, what there is. Is this a proof that you can do it? Is this an execution kind of reward for you? Is it a long-term business strategy that you are trying to execute on? Is it just capital to build the one thing you've wanted to do? And what you really should make sure that when you're defining your risks on top of that is that they all really meet that reward goal. For me, my goal is to build a sturdy business that can kind of move efficiently through this marketplace and build technology that I can apply to other stuff. And that's something that you really want to make sure that you focus on day one. And if you don't, then what you end up doing is having a muddled kind of mash of, oh, well, things, it may be valuable to me in the end, but I don't really understand what the ultimate goal is, and I'm too far down the road now. So, yeah, thank you very much. With that, I'll let everybody kind of ask some questions. I'm an open book, just ask.
You mentioned the data king, Mark, what's his last name?
Mark Pond, he's over at the library. He's the business development services over at the Spokane Public Library downtown.
It's like P-O-N-D?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Coy. Yeah.
What was the biggest thing you didn't know going that you learned from it, or you wish you would have?
Oh, shipping, fulfillment. My goodness, especially international fulfillment. That was a true blue, honest. During the Kickstarter, not before. We made stupid assumptions about what we think it's going to cost in order to ship stuff, especially international. We relied on some tools that were available to us that kind of gave us some generated numbers. And the fact is there are VAT taxes and freight cost and transport cost and all sorts of stuff. And then you have accessorial cost or accessorial, whichever you prefer to call it, costs that are associated when things land, and when they leave. So you need to be very, 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 very confident before you even bother putting together your Kickstarter page what the shipping is going to cost for every tier and every item and every RMA that you make. And if you don't, you will regret it. It will be quite expensive. It's $20,000 or more just to ship this stuff. So, yeah, it's crazy. And it's terrifying because backers know if you don't do a good job of finding a fulfillment house and help you, if you're trying to deliver all over the world, you got to find a fulfiller that's going to handle most of that stuff for you. And if you don't, then you are not going to be able to, one, negotiate, and two, really understand what that pricing model looks like. And your backers know, and they will back out. And they do back out. And when you come in and you go, oh yeah, U.S. shipping is like, $30, they're going to go, yeah, not interested. And they'll back right out. And they did that to us. For about 2 hours, we really messed up the numbers, and I relied on some information that wasn't 100% accurate. And we posted it, and we got handed for it. Yeah. So we corrected it, and then we had to correct it even more every couple weeks because the data would change as we would go along. And then finally, we got our final shipping prices and quotes. And that was weeks after the Kickstarter was officially done that we were really, really, really clear on what that shipping cost was. And if it increased after the Kickstarter, we were going to eat that cost. So that's an important thing to be aware of. Mm-hmm. Kelly?
Yeah, what advice do you have for people looking for manufacturers for their prototype? They don't know where to go. Where do they start? How do they choose the right place?
I still do this to this day. In fact, before I got here, I was looking for someone to, not looking, but I had an idea. We have to print information on the back of these. And we had tested it using vinyl, and our cutters allow us to do the vinyl for this. But I really wanted a better quality on those. They last longer. And what I've learned in terms of finding manufacturers is that you can go with a shop that's been doing exactly what you're trying to do, and they're definitely going to knock it out of the park for you. Price will probably be the same. They'll have a good rate for you, but you're going to need to order in high volume in order for it to mean something. Or you can start looking for partners that have the thing that you think that you need to do. If it's a new invention and you're building it out of metal, well, the best place to go is a place that knows how to fold metal or cut metal or what have you. If you're looking for plastic injection molding, find them, talk to them, and one, they're going to tell you A, they can do it, or B, they're going to give you the information you need to ask the questions or to look up those terms, or C, they're going to tell you no and hopefully recommend someone else. And that's the way you have to play the game. You kind of worm your way through your pool of knowledge through kind of a structured mind map. This is the thing I need to know. What are the pieces of that I know, and what do I not know? Okay, how do I answer every one of those? Okay, great. And you just keep breaking it down until eventually you become the knowledge expert, to a degree, on how to figure that out. I mean, I know everything about this because I've just, spent a lot of time trying to understand it. You know what I mean? I've never would have known as much about neoprene as I do now. It's It seems like a totally useless skill. You're like, how much do you know about neoprene? A ton, right? Okay.
In your opinion, is it better to go domestic or international, given the pros and cons of both?
That's a
close to a wash.
No, I don't believe so. I think it's going to be based on volume. Volume's a big one, because if you order something and you're getting the minimum order, you're not getting a price break on it typically. And the Chinese, specifically the Chinese, but you can go with the Taiwanese or there's a number of different. I mean, you can get it done through India. There's a number of different countries you can go to. China's not the only source. We're just being jerks to them right now. So the thing is that you can pick one of those, but the true blue concept is, are you cool with the wait time? Are you cool with the sample costs, because you're going to pay for samples every time they have to ship over? Are you cool with the risk that comes with the quantity or the quality on it? And the rule is that if they give you a price break, they've got to make it up. Anybody does. If I give you a price break on something, in the back of my head on my invoice, somewhere hidden in the details is going to be how I'm going to recover that cost that I gave you a break on. It's not because we're best friends, right? It's because I think that there's a long-term relationship that's going to come out of this. If the Chinese or the company that's manufacturing overseas doesn't think there's a long-term relationship, you're giving up quality and you're giving up speed, without question. So my take is things that you know you could never get at a better price and are pretty consistently done overseas, perfect. Magnets. You can't really screw up a magnet, right? You could certainly try. The power could be, not great, but you can test all that stuff. You can make them test it for you on film if you want to. You can do that. That's not a big deal. Cloths. If you need something done on a cloth. We originally, our cleaning cloths had an embroidery pattern on them. And the photos I got were awesome. But when we received them, they were not awesome. They were pretty bad. And when I talked to the Chinese manufacturer, she said, well, we can't do any better than that, and you need to move it, to certain places. And I said, I think you can, because this is the other product we just got from overseas that has a better embroidery on it. That's the bag. And she's like, it's going to cost you an extra to get this done. And I said, well, there it is. So I either do it locally or I give up that concept entirely. But a cloth is normal, and that I can get anywhere. The embroidery is the complicated part that I had to make the justification on. I believe that the best approach to doing stuff right now is to let the people that order high volume stuff like steel and neoprene and plastic and all that, do it locally. Not even just in the United States, try to do it locally. And if you can do it locally, almost always you're going to be able to find a methodology that's going to allow you to make it, fit within your price point. And it's simply just because it's better for you, it's better for the economy, it's better for the environment, and frankly, you have a better understanding of the risks that you're applying to the execution of that thing. Yeah.
You got a handle on quality control a little bit too.
Wow, without question. The quality control on this thing is better than anything I've ever seen. It's insane. Cytec is ISO 9001 certified, they're UL certified, they know everything about this stuff, and the quality that they bring to that is better than absolutely anything that I can get done overseas. In fact, I knew that going into it, that we made agreements before we even made any sort of additional orders that we were going to work with them, because I wanted to do it in the US. Because quality on that particular thing very specifically was number one for us. And if I lost some money in getting it done here, well, I made it up in stress, right? One, and also it would reduce my returns. I wouldn't go from a 5% failure rate. I'd go from a 5% overseas, which they're allowed by international trade agreements indicate that they can have a 4% failure rate. Now ponder that. Imagine you were ordering, your product had a margin on it that was, 10%, really low, right? And you had to order 10,000 units of that. 4% is pretty freaking high. You lose a pretty substantial amount of money and have to make it up on the other side of that. That's awful. And then the freight costs and the delivery costs and the shoring costs and all that other crap that comes with it. It's awful. In my mind, not worth the stress. Not at all. Until you build the infrastructure where you have your own freight ship that goes across the ocean. and your wife's name's on the side of the boat. You know what I mean? So,
What was your marketing budget like for the Kickstarter campaign?
we took out a line of credit for about $10,000, and we used portions of it for certain things. The marketing budget we spent about, I don't know, like $700 on social media marketing, and then the rest of it went towards like production, because your marketing budget includes production of the video, any sort of software that you would buy that would be associated with the marketing aspect of it. So we probably spent about $2,000, I would say, maybe a little bit more on marketing, which should have been more, could have been. You do what you can do.
So it was 700 on, I'm guessing Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
Is about what you.
It's about something like that. Yeah.
What was the total back?
It was 103,000, and then it stepped back right at the end to $99,004. Yeah. So we broke the six-figure and then stepped back a little bit with some backouts.
Yeah, it's looking for 700. So for 700, there were you able to see basically what was the where were the people coming from? It landing on your
Sure.
campaign, were they coming from
Good question.
your marketing, even mailing list, and how did the percentage?
We worked with some artists that existed. One of the things that we kept hearing out of the gate was influencers. Connect with influencers; they're going to help you. It was an impossible task because most of the time they're going to want one, or you're going to have to pay the advertising budget, and we wouldn't know what the return on it would actually be. And so the way that we chose to do it is that we needed to produce creative art, and there were designers and artists and cartographers that existed in this marketplace already that were very good at their work, very well loved by the community, and frankly, we're all artists, so we wanted to figure out how to support them so that we could move into the bigger strategy of producing a variety of these things for the community. And so what I did is I connected with those artists and gave them a very respectable residual on the sets that they sell through the Kickstarter, and they frankly brought in the majority of the people that backed us. And so we in essence enabled them to generate their own profit through connecting them to our Kickstarter.
That's cool. Yeah, so that goes back to like what you were talking about, creating a place where people can come and
You got it.
build out their,
You got it. That's how that kind of connects it there, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And frankly, we love I have an illustration background, and so the problem that we've got right now in that market is that like Patreon is a subscription service. It's somewhat consistent, but you really have to work your butt off, or you sell on Etsy, and then you have to deal with the production and so forth of those things. These artists want to make maps, they want to make designs, they want to make stickers. It's just the bulk order stinks for them because they're working for this. They're working for every cent. So if they have to do 1,000 of these and it costs them, $1,500 or whatever it's going to take, they lose out if they can't sell them all. And so the on-demand approach to us being able to put these out of the gate is valuable for them. It's valuable for me because I don't want to hold inventory. I don't know if they're any, they could have a bad month and just completely annihilate my budget. So that's where that comes from. But they are the ones that ultimately gave us the most.
Yeah, that's cool. Nice.
You touched on it. I was going to ask you about influencers and whether or not you thought they were worth it.
I don't know if I'm a good authority on that. There are some very incredible people that really know their stuff, wonderful channels, and write some wonderful posts, and really have it on lock. I imagine that there is quite the value in that. I haven't figured out personally how to really access that just yet, and how to make that money play out in a way that I can analyze. But I imagine I will over time. And so I'm not going to say whether or not they're good or bad, or whether you should or you shouldn't. I think that your product and your pitch is going to be dramatically different than mine, and that you should go about connecting with people that know more about this stuff than you do, and seeing if they're willing to support you. And that's what we kind of did. You know what I mean? So, yes and no is the answer to that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did your campaign end?
It finished on July 12th.
This Okay.
Yeah, delivery date.
What, guess your delivery? Probably, end of October.
Yeah, October 31st. So we've got, 63 days left to complete the entire enchilada on all of this.
Where are you guys at right now?
The boards are starting, officially starting production. I have a final, how do you feel about this meeting tomorrow? And they will just slide through. The bags are just about done. If you watch our Instagram, we post stuff. The bags are about to be put on a freight to be shipped over, which is great. And the accessories, on Friday, we officially moved the equipment. And I started Monday with my team and some training to lock up that production workflow. Outside of that, those are the things, the box. We're working on the box. We have a big wooden case, which, it's there's not a lot of them, but we're working on making sure that's finalized. And we 3D printed. We had a very, very, my wife's brother and incredible, works for Star, printed a full-size case for us to test it. So we're if we make it right, my intent gone and out the door by the 31st, and then we'll store in the next 3 or 4 weeks to enable people to do more pre-orders and things like that. Additional artist sets in there and do that, and we'll have it out the door at the very latest of the 31st, and the following day you'll be able to go back ordering on these. So Black Friday is my drop dead better be in retail day. In retail being our store. Yeah.
When did you come up with the idea? Is that just the beginning of this year?
Yeah, I think it was. Is that right? Yeah, we came up with the idea at the end of last year and March, or it was after the last Penny Arcade. So
that's a pretty quick turnaround from shipping.
Yeah. Well, bear in mind, there was, again, it comes back down to your relationships and your partnerships. There's a lot there in terms of having to figure it out, and your velocity is going to dictate how everybody else behaves too. And that's a very big lesson for myself, my business partners, and the people that have been connected with us, is that you can definitely operate at Mach 5. There's no question in my mind and my heart, and I do. I work from sunup to sundown, essentially, constantly. You can do it, but not everybody else can do that. And the people that support you may be supporting you in different ways besides that. And you have to be willing to understand that. And if you set a goal, do it. And if it means taking certain things off, or adding certain things, or having concessions along the way, do it. And if you don't do it, then it's never going to get done. I've learned that so many times in all of my businesses, that we're like, that's a cool idea. The data kind of plays out. It shows the market. There's plenty there, and you're busy. You're busy with your day-to-day. You're busy with all this other stuff, and you just can't get it done. And then what does it do? It goes into the ideas book, right? And that's, so we keep an ideas book around the office, and we call it ideas, but it has tons of stuff that's amazing, right? And would require help and money and time to do it. But most people typically aren't going to want to kill themselves to get something done. And anytime you do this, you're gonna kill yourself. You are. Yeah, unless.
Did you get legal protection on that at all? Or So.
Yeah.
Trademark.
Yeah. Trademark. So it's a couple trademarks on the names and our company name, obviously, and then patents on a couple different variations of the technology, not only in one market, but a couple different markets. So yeah, we went out of our way to make sure that was in place. Yeah.
Utility or design? Could you get a utility patent on it?
Yeah, well, a utility. Well, it depends on what you're doing. If the design is like, hey, that's a good question. And we went with utility because the utility is the application of a couple different things, but the one that I'm going to speak to, and I won't speak to the other one, is this, right? The magnetic connecting of this. These are two different versions. That's why they're different shades. But that's that utility of a magnetic game board that has a coating that is solvent and what is it? It's a solvent and dye resistant, effectively. And then there are other patents associated with the actual any erase coating.
So, just quickly, the coating itself is, so are you are able to have 50% of that, or is that, because that coating to me seems like almost more interesting than, from my background in industrial, what we do is,
I would agree with that.
so how did that work with them? Just,
It's an inventor.
is it,
Yeah, they're listed as an inventor.
okay.
Yeah.
But it would, because they came up with it, trying to develop what you were after.
Yeah, what ends up happening is that you have a bundle of relationships that occur, and everybody that's involved in that receives they receive consideration, and they're added to that, and the company that files it is the one that has the ability to utilize it. Yeah, and it's not cheap to file patents and trademarks, but if you're going to do it, Lee and Hayes in town is the company to do it.
How many people are on your team, full-time or part-time, and who else are you going to for outside services?
Great meeting you, and thank you for the questions.
Thank you.
Well, we have, so Uxiliary is a team of five now, and the two partners that are in that, or we're early stage with this. I have Greg, who has been with me since the very, very beginning on this, and kind of was through the early ideation and the ideas when we first were like, when I was laying in bed typing, the blueprint, he was in the other bed. So there's a variety of people, but really it's about 6 people in total. Most of the guys have full-time jobs, and gals have full-time jobs, do other stuff. So I'm full-time, and they're kind of part-time. That's why evenings come in, right? Because most people can only work in the evenings and stuff like that. So, yeah. But now we're getting ready to move into our facility. We'll hire some staff, pick up some key positions on certain things. Yeah.
So this is your, so when you left your contract job, that was last?
No. So I stopped contracting in the middle of 2014, the end of 2014, middle of 2014. Started Uxiliary, which is our creative development agency. Worked there, and then started a nonprofit around a little less than half a year later, and then effectively worked that until March of this until like March of this year. Was my last paycheck was the day after, or essentially we finished the Kickstarter, and I didn't get another paycheck after that. So yeah. So it's in essence, I moved from one business to fully managing this one. Yeah. So it's interesting stuff. It's hard. It's definitely hard. Yeah. Anybody have any other interesting questions or? Cool. All right.
I definitely have a lot of questions, but I'll give you my question.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.